The world is safe. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions, how's it going?
Man, it's going pretty good because last night I got one of my favorite dad jokes off on my family. So my daughter asked for a treat. They're way on the other side of the house, right? Because I have a weird split level house. So they're on the other side of the house, and my daughter was like, "Oh, I want this treat thing," and my wife said, "No, no, 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 no," playfully, Yeah. But she did it the right number of times that from across the house I could go, "Mr. Sandman." And of course, neither of my kids have any idea what that means, right? But my wife laughed, so I felt funny. And it reminded me, I've been holding on to this dad joke for you for 2 weeks. I was like, I heard this.
Nice.
And I want to share this with George. So if I already shared this with you, I'm going to feel stupid, but you can just lie, pretend. It's 2/3, right? 71% of the earth is water, right?
Something like that, yeah.
And the vast majority of that water is uncarbonated, you would say?
I would argue with that. I would argue that is correct, yes.
Right. So the earth is flat.
Nice.
Right? I love that. I especially love because in the context that I learned that joke, it ends with, because it's person, scientist, yeah. And the joke ends with the scientist going, "Now listen here, you little shit."
Yeah. It's funny until you say it to somebody, they're like, "So you get it?" And you're like, "Oh, no, I don't think you do." Yeah, actually, I was talking to some people at work recently, and we were trying to workshop this thing. It was two different organizations kind of going back and forth. And, they said well, maybe this is a solution, or maybe we could do this. This is a solution. They're like, "I don't think that's a solution." I was like, guys, just remember, alcohol is a solution.
I love that because it's so depressing, but it is actually it's a good joke, right? And there's a similar version that's if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the precipitate, which is I feel like that one would get a lot of groans, right?
Yeah. I like that one. My favorite version of that one that I use pretty regularly at work, actually, which is it says, "Don't be part of the problem, be the whole problem."
Yes. I've heard that before, but I happened to see it recently, and it was a version I hadn't seen before, where it's Sailor Moon, it's all pink background. She's all in her sailor suit. And Luna is her cat is in the foreground, cheering on the thing she's saying. And so she starts with, "Don't let anyone ruin your day." And Luna's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "You're in charge of your own destiny." "Yeah, you ruin your own day." What?
Exactly. But we played video games, and we should probably podcast about that.
Yeah. Oh, wait, what? Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should. I think we have a little formula we like to go through. There's some banter, there's some shilling, and then there's a mailbag question. So I guess now we would be on to the shilling.
We would.
Yeah. Yeah.
4 shillings.
4 shillings. Is it, what would be the rough equivalent in modern parlance? Would a shilling be roughly equivalent to $1? Not necessarily in direct buying power, but how they would use it.
Yeah, I struggle a lot with. There is only one non-U.S. currency that I know really well, and that is Dungeons and Dragons. So
yes, which we're talking about.
Yeah, I know those two currencies real well. I don't know, if somebody said to me, "Oh, that'll be 3 shillings." It's is that copper, silver pieces? Yeah, I don't, you gotta help me out here, man.
I know, loonies is the nickname for $1 in Canada. And because they do $2, which we don't do, they have toonies. So, it's one of those things where, as an American, because you're grown up, you get kind of raised on punching down at Canada's culture. There is definitely a come on, you don't really call your money loonies, do you? And it's no, we really do.
So according to this, currently 1 shilling is worth about 2.5 cents.
Oh,
but
geez.
again, when you think about it though, right? Like this was, way back in the day,
when
so like
pennies had value.
Right. So even if you argue that the ratio between the two was the same, right? Like saying like, oh, that, I could go see a movie for a nickel. So, a shilling would be, probably when you normally hear it used, probably about what we would consider $1 today, like, oh, you can get a roast pheasant for like 5 shillings or something. I don't fucking know. Yeah. So.
Well, if people somehow are still on board with what we're doing for as little as 1 shilling, they can get the after show. So
dude, it's like 50 shillings.
You know what? Actually, that might not literally be true, because in the way I think I have Patreon set up is that you can elect like how much you want to. Oh, you know what? Patreon probably does $1 minimum because the transaction fees they have to pay for. So, okay. So as little as whatever number of shillings equals $1.
Yeah.
But if you want to support the show, you can give us your shillings and then you will get more show as well as extra stuff. You can support us for free by leaving a rating and review and those dumb things. Links in the show notes to those dumb things, as well as the Patreon. But personally, I'm just a big fan of like the recommend an episode. Like you think somebody who would like this, like just recommend the show right to them, maybe a specific game, because then you cut out the middleman of them having to like go and look at Apple Podcast reviews. Who does that? Nobody does that. But if you support us, you get the after show. And if you support us at a high enough level, we'll actually shout you out on the show. So with that, I have to first thank our 4-bit portables, David, Jacob, Joshua, Keith, and Martin, our 8-bit classics, Yarno, Jay Brent, John, and Kevin, and our 16-bit hero, Michael.
And for $1,000, we will design a custom coin in your honor and have it created.
Ooh.
You see?
And call it the shilling with like a hyphen.
Yeah, exactly. And so one, that makes all of that improv stuff before we just did sound planned, because it's like, does. It's like we were planting the seed. 1, and 2, it is a service that you can get much cheaper almost anywhere else.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Way less than it. I mean, unless it's $1,000 coin.
Unless you want to spend $1,000 on it, but
it's not going to be. It's going to be a commemorative.
But the difference is, it wasn't designed lovingly by us.
For them specifically.
Exactly.
So we have
mailbag.
Oh God, was that like a Blues Clues? Did we just do a Blues Clues thing?
I don't know, but I feel like we do need to have a little mailbag song. Like
that is definitely Blues Clues. I mean, and also like Pee Wee Herman and probably a bunch of other kids shows, but I don't know. Well, maybe that's the thing.
Mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I like to yell mail or something like that, right?
Yeah. The look on your face while that was slowly occurring to you was one of like confidence, like, oh yeah, no, I think I know this. But there was also a little bit of like happiness that you're like, oh, I'm recalling this thing I wanted to recall. And then a little, I think a thin veneer of sadness that you were like, but it was in there. This memory was in there for me to find, which I don't feel great about.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of times when I kind of want to shake my brain and be like, can you remember more important stuff and not all this weird arcane nonsense? But, here we are.
So my kid, last thing, I swear, my kids don't watch a ton of TV, right? Like we try to keep that pretty low. But a lot of because of their ages and the things they're interested in and the things we are interested in, a lot of what they do watch ends up being on Disney Plus, right? Mm-hmm. So Disney Plus, like every other media service, has their like sound that plays, before a thing. So for them, it's like a kind of like swooshy noise because it's the line that goes around the Disney logo and then it hits the eye and it makes the plus, right? It's a little like swoosh, right? HBO has the static, Netflix has the bum, right? Every production company has these. So I was playing music at dinner time and I, like an idiot, used a community playlist, and that community playlist wasn't songs from albums, it was YouTube videos. And a lot of those YouTube videos were either on the Disney YouTube channel or were ripped from Disney Plus illegally. And so they had like background sounds in the video because it's actually a scene from the movie, but they all also had the little like bum at the beginning. And my kids literally both went like, oh, this must be from Disney Plus. And I went, oh, no. Nope. I don't like that, especially because I know that feeling. Like there's a board game that's all about like, can you recognize this like company logo without the words on it. And I was like, I can never play that game because right after I won handily, I would kill myself.
Yep. But mailbag.
So this one came in a while ago, and because of a discussion we were just having recently that we may also continue in the after show, I thought this would be a good one to ask and get the conversation juices going a little bit. What's one thing that either you want to accomplish or have accomplished for yourself with starting and continuing the podcast so far? So far, as of this recording, is like 6 3/4 years. Like which I had to look that up, and I just went like, huh.
Yeah, it's weird. It's especially weird when you consider it's like, my eldest son was a newborn when we decided to start this,
Yeah.
and now he is in 2nd grade. So it's just like, wow, that's a lot of time. And it, to me, becomes particularly evident when you go back and you listen to some of the old episodes and you're like, oh no, young George, your mic technique is terrible. You're using so many vocal fillers. This is barely tolerable. Your opinions are not like terrible, but they're not as polished. Yes, I get that, Sonic has bright colors. Noted.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah, which is not something I thought super heavily about when I was like, we should make a show that's evergreen, because that means like we as the showrunners have a vested interest in people going into our back catalog, but we're also kind of ashamed of it. So it's like, yeah, go back there, but take some grace with you when you go back there, because like it's not as clean and tidy as it is up here.
Yeah, no, agreed. But what is the one thing you're jonesing for?
So the thing we wanted to accomplish, we collectively, you and I, set out to, we were like, we want a project to do together, right? Because we're brohams and we live kind of far apart. So we were like, we want just a thing we can collaboratively work on ongoing, right? We've played TTRPGs before. You and I have never really done online games because we just don't have a schedule, I think, that would make that super...
Yeah, especially with where schedule and time difference and stuff like that, it'd be a little tough to coordinate that.
Yeah, but that's something like halfway through episode 1, it was like, all right, we did it. We embarked on a project together, and we've kept it going where we've changed up some of the episode types and we've changed up a little bit of the structure. But we have not missed. We've had to have a couple guests every once in a while. We actually will let Mike speak up, but we've hit all of this with not a nary an episode missed, right? Which is pretty incredible. And because we are doing this as a hobby, like that feels like, okay, on its own, like on the face of it, we are doing the thing we set out to do. And then the fact that other people listen, and we have some very generous patrons that help us like pay for hosting and stuff, which we're paying for out of pocket. Like that's amazing. Like I love that. In terms of like things I want to accomplish with like the structure of the show itself, or like what it is we are doing ostensibly as the content of Nostalgia Goggles, that I think I am starting to actually come up short on, because a lot of what we wanted to do was like get better at deconstructing games and thinking about what we were doing and the hobby that we put a lot of time and money into, like spend a lot on video games. And we have gotten to a point where I'm like, I feel pretty good about my ability to recognize what I like, what I don't like, and more importantly, why I like it, why I don't like it. And the like sub thing to that I wasn't planning on, but that I think is actually more important, is I've gotten a lot better at understanding why other people might like something that I don't like, right? And vice versa, especially because there are some things that are fundamental to my gaming experience that you hate, right? And so it's like, I've learned a lot about not just why do I like this, but also empathizing with the fact that somebody might not, right? And like that's I think the real values the friendship we made along the way, that kind of bullshit. So like you the treasure you find is not necessarily the treasure you're looking for, but it's the treasure you needed. So that's like where, unless we were setting out to become professional reviewers, like have paid writing gigs and have a huge YouTube channel where we do video reviews, and we're in tight with game studios and we get pre-access stuff, which I'm not after personally. So like, I actually don't know what's next. Like I got what I wanted out of it, and like, I feel good about that. I just don't know if there is something next, or if it's, more the status quo is now like, okay, we got to the promised city on the hill. We're not now looking for a promised city in the clouds.
Right. Very, very, very somber. Yes. So no, actually, co-sign pretty much everything you said. You took the two main things I was going to say, which is one, the thing that I wanted to set out to accomplish, that I feel like we've both kind of iterated a number of different times, is like I wanted to hang out. Like that's what I wanted to do. And the thing with hanging out is that it's really easy to not, if you say like, hey, every Saturday we're gonna hang out and spend time together. It's like, oh well, this Saturday I have this thing going on, and it's easy to punt that, because there's like, well, which am I gonna do? Miss a friend's going away party, or miss a random hangout session that could be anytime, any place, right? So it's really easy to punt the one. But if you have a project, the thing that you're working on, well, there's some responsibility that goes along with that, right? So that was the main thing. The secondary thing was to hone my analytical skills and be able to like pick something apart and say like, oh well, this is why this is probably done this way. Also, another kind of sneak goal is that it's made me better at my job, because understanding why video games do certain things with their visuals or their mechanics or what have you has helped me in my personal life. Literally just earlier today, I was meeting with my son's teacher, and she was saying, hey, we want to kind of do a report card kind of a thing. And I said, hey, you might want to scale it on like a multiple point scale, because otherwise, if it's a thumbs up, thumbs down, the minute he gets the thumbs down, he has no incentive to do anything that you say for the rest of the day, and might as well burn it all down, because he goes from being at 100% to 0. So you may want to like make that a more graded scale. And she's like, oh, that's a good idea. I'm like, oh, it's a good game mechanic, like if all of a sudden, you had one gold piece, and like you spent it, then there's no reason for in Skyrim for you not just like murder everybody. Or actually, that's a great example, because once you've killed one person, your bounty's at 1,000, and if you don't have 1,000 gold, you're like, it is now all of my gold, so might as well kill as many people as I can to just keep rolling the dice and see if I kill everyone. I say all of that to say that so that is what I set out for and what I wanted. As far as like what there is still to do, I agree. I think that the amount of time and energy it would take to push the podcast to the point where it could even be worth calling like, oh, well, this is a monetized hobby or something. Like, this is 100% a way for us to hang out, right? So like, if all of a sudden it was like, hey, we need to spend another 10 hours a week on this because of this, that, and the third thing, it's like, I should just work overtime, like if I'm trying to make money off of it, right? This is purely for fun. And again, very, very happy and humbled that there are people that listen to the podcast, and enjoy it and enjoy us talking. But, that's always been the game. And I agree. Then the question is, like, do you keep doing it because there is joy to be found in just doing it? Or do you, like try other stuff and things like that? So.
There's a little parable. I wish I could remember the source of it. I'm sure if I Googled for it, I could come up with it. But it's, if you like chatting with people and talking about great coffee and like seeing people, relax, and like after a hard day, like you don't want to own a coffee shop. You want to be a barista, right?
Right.
And those are two very different jobs that from the outside you could squint and say like, well, those are the same job. It's just the barista works for somebody else and the person who owns the coffee shop owns the coffee shop. And it's like, right, which means all the other jobs at the coffee shop are also done by that person, right? And so for me, like the idea of saying I'm a professional internet person, like I do full-time podcasting, I do full-time, article writing, I do full-time internet stuff, and I have like a million little sources of income instead of like one, W-2 paycheck. I don't find that to be unpalatable. I also am not striving for it. Like I would have to really believe like this is what I want to do so much that I'm willing to also clean the toilets in the coffee shop and sweep the floors of the coffee shop and be responsible for ordering new coffee so that there's coffee for me to brew for the people that I like having the conversations with. Like I understand all of that because like working in tech, I'm very close to the like, oh, startup, like, make your own company. So I have a pretty decent view on that, which is why I also feel like I'm pretty confident on like, I don't really want to do that. Like if I was independently wealthy and I could just say like, I behave like a person who is a professional internet person, I just don't have to live off of that money. So there's like no, if you could be a rich asshole and just do whatever you wanted all the time, sure, is what I'm saying. So if someone wants to fund me, like if they want to be, like a patron of the arts, then like, yeah, totally. I will be a professional rich asshole, but I don't think anybody's lining up to do that. So I'm going to have to keep this probably as a hobby.
I actually had a similar thing recently where I had an idea that I thought was like a really, really, really good business idea. And so actually, well, one thing to your point of the barista, right? Yeah, 100%. And I had that brought into stark confirmation for me when I was, a laboratory director. I was running a lab, and I said, as a chemist, and one of our friends said, "You're not a chemist, you're an administrator." And I was like, oh no, you're right. I have not done chemistry in many moons now, right? So yeah, I'm not a chemist. I manage chemists, but I stopped being a chemist long ago. But no, I had an idea for what I thought was having had run a business, right, as a lab director. I was like, people come to me, friends mostly come to me all the time. They're like, I've got a great idea for a business. And I'm like, this is a terrible idea. Like just crunching the numbers in my head, like, no. One, the market's already saturated. Normally, if you've got this like aha idea, chances are you got it because somebody else is doing something similar, and so the market's saturated, right? So like, one, the market's saturated. Two, your margins are razor thin. Three, like all of this stuff, right? But I actually had an idea where I was like, I think this might actually have some chops to it. It would require like a sizable business loan in order to get it started, but this could be an idea that has some success. And I was like, so I would have to do this over the next 5 years. And then arguably the businesses would, over 5 years, I think, become sustainable to the point where I could be making like, low to mid 6 figures in about 5 years and maybe even 7 figures in like 10 to 15 years, right? And I was like, that's pretty cool. I'm not going to do that because I am making enough money that like, which is very, very fortunate. Like, I'm making enough money where I can support my lifestyle. I'm going to be able to save up enough for retirement. So why spend all of my free time trying to make more money? I have the money that I need, And so now all I'm doing is losing years off of my life to get more things that I can't exchange for time anymore. So I say all that to say that, yeah, if you said to me like, hey man, I think we could monetize this. Honestly, if you came to me and you said like, I want to put in the extra effort to monetize it, I would literally not be weighing the amount of time I'd be putting into the money I'd be getting back, the amount of time I'd be weighing how much time I'd be putting in to how happy I'd be making you my friend. And that would be the mental calculus I would be doing and whether or not that was worth it. But yeah, so no, I don't think that we're at the point where we're like, oh no, we gotta get more. It's like, no man, this is fine. We're not just screaming into the void. Some people listen.
Well, even just thinking about it, we in the early days we did some episodes that were like movies that were game movies, right? Yeah. And like that was fun. Like that was fun for us, but it's a totally different thing, right? Like it felt adjacent, and then we did it, and we're thinking about like how we felt about it, and looking at like download numbers for those, and it was like, yeah, I don't think we should keep doing this, right? Like this, it feels too outside like the orbit we care about. And then I think two times, a couple times at least, we've had developers that we interviewed, right? And we like talked to them about their game, and that is a very cool thing in the abstract. Like, oh man, you had access to like a game developer, and like you got to talk to them. And it's like, yes. Now just think about any random person you've ever met in your life and think about if you would want them to be interviewed and if you would listen to that interview. Is the answer no? Right? Because not everyone who is a game developer is also a great conversationalist. And we were lucky. Like we had two people who had already done the media circuit thing, and like they knew how to be interviewed, and they were generous to us because we were new to being interviewers. So like that was very fortunate. The thing that made me freak out about the idea of like continuing to run that down is like, I don't want to be an ambulance chaser. Like I don't want to be chasing down game developers and being like, no, don't spend an hour on that podcast. Come spend an hour on my podcast, because then I have to make it worth their while, because for them, it is a business expense. For us, it was like, we like to talk about video games, right? So like there's completely misaligned incentives. And I was like, I don't want to be doing that. And sometimes you're going to like swing and miss, right? Like you and I have I would say fairly predictable quality level. Even if the quality's low, at least it's predictable. Like we have a fairly predictable quality level, but when you're doing interviews, like it is all on you to make the other person look like a star, right? So you have to do all of the work and you carry all of the risk, and they get all of the credit. Only people who like really follow media personalities would ever say like, oh, so and so is a great interviewer, right? Like I don't care about the people they're interviewing. I follow them because they're an interviewer, and I love, you know, the stories they get out of their interviewees or whatever. And like that's, again, interesting, but like not how I am really feeling like spending my entire life right now. So we have tried some other. Am I missing any? Did we do? I don't think we had. Yeah.
That's about it. But yeah, I mean, and to your point, right, is that like, and honestly, from my seat, is that I know that like at one point you said like, oh, let's interview some people. I was like, all right, cool, man. You know, because again, it still checked the box of I get to hang out with lions. And it was like, oh, let's try some movie stuff. And it's like, yeah, you know, let's because I think it was my idea to try the movie stuff. But then you were kind of like, this isn't really working. I was like, oh, I mean, all right, let's keep hanging out then, you know? So again, to me, like the overarching, you know, thrust of like, we're going to hang out, that box has always been checked, so I'll do anything. But yeah, so you know, more in the after show if you want to pay 50 shillings. So what are you playing and why should I care?
So the ongoing saga...
No, wait, shut up. I have to share this with you.
Sorry,
so,
way more important.
Yeah. No, so I watched some edutainment where one of them, it's a lot of...
I'm leaving that whole transition in. Like, that's all staying.
Good.
Just that way.
Where it's you know, like people tweeting at like, you know, an optometrist or, you know, like a nuclear bomb expert, you know.
So and like optometrist reacts. That kind of...
Well, it's not so much they react, but the
expert answers questions.
Expert answers questions on Twitter, kind of a thing. But she said, you know, like blonde tomato FFXIV says, and I paused it, and I was like, no, their handle is blonde tomato Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah, it is.
But it just said FFXIV, and I just paused. I was like, no. I get that, like, you're a nuclear bomb expert and not like an expert in video games, but you flubbed that, and I know it. Continue. So sorry, I saw your your thing, and I had to share that. That was very important.
Yeah, no, it was, and you know, you actually raise an interesting point, which is, there is not, in my personal experience, 100% consistency on the way you say certain things out loud. So, like, when I was a kid and there were only a handful of Final Fantasies, a paltry dozen, right? Like, people would say like FF2, FF6, FF12, FF7, right? Like, and it feels like it started to shift around the time Final Fantasy VII got super popular because people started talking about it the way they heard it, and they heard it mostly from marketing because that game was so heavily marketed, right? So they would say Final Fantasy VII, like the it's like a Tribe Called Quest, right? They say the whole thing. And that it doesn't sound wrong to me, but it also sounds like a little clunky. And I would never say the letters, right? So like I write it as FFXIV because that's faster to type. But even if I was reading a paragraph of text that had that in it, when I got to that text, I would say Final Fantasy 14, right? Like, you got to say the whole thing. It would be very strange to me to, if I was going to shorten it, I would shorten the Final Fantasy part, right? So I'd say like FF14, but like the kids don't do that anymore because they're too cool. Like, so I would just have to say the whole thing, which sounds like you're reading from a marketing copy and the trademark is there, and so the company is forcing you to say the whole thing. But FFXIV is just, I wouldn't have done that with the shorter ones either, right? Like FFVII, FF7. No.
FFX is visual effects, but like that's VFX. Never mind. But yeah,
it's
anyway. So you're playing
fully film effects.
But you're playing FFXIV.
I am, and because that is now just the background radiation of my life. And I'm fine with it. I don't currently have anything new and exciting to say about it, but I am still putting time into it, which is why I noted here because it takes away time from other games.
Final Fantasy 14, the cosmic radiation of video games.
Kinda. That's how MMOs are, man. Like it seems like people list all of the games they're playing and then they're like, also this one MMO. And then I lose my mind when someone says they play like 3 or 4 MMOs at a time. I'm like, so what is it like to be independently wealthy? Is it just, is that like, because you have to have some money to pay for the equipment and the subscription. You can't just be happy being completely destitute. You must have some income to pay for your MMO habit. Anyway, Also playing 16, which is the newest one. I think you would really enjoy parts of 16 because it's all action combat, right? So it's all live, real time, zero menus, 100% like modern God of War style kind of action combat. And it's very fun. They brought in the guy who designed the combat system for Devil May Cry, and then they like modernized and simplified it a little bit, so it's not just crazy button mashing. Like there is, technique to it. It's really fun. I've been enjoying it a lot. The story sequences are frequent and meaty. And so even though you have like a little bit of freedom, I would say if the cutscenes in God of War are like at your threshold, this would be too much, right? Like they're long, they're all voice acted, they're all acted. So like they're excellent cutscenes, but they're heavy. And there's just a lot by volume. They very honestly are wearing their heart on their sleeve about, we designed this game when Game of Thrones was super popular, and we decided to make it like Game of Thrones. It's the first Final Fantasy that's ever been rated M for mature, or AO, I think, overseas for adults only. A lot of blood, a lot of not any like graphic nudity yet, but like you saw like a married couple in bed naked together, and like you couldn't see anything, but like it was clear they were going to get down. But lots of blood, no guts, lots of blood splatter, but blood on people's faces, blood all over the place. But I'm really enjoying it. It's a nice change of pace from like an MMO fantasy universe to just have like read this great book, right? Watch this great movie. It's mostly linear, but I love the story. The characters are well realized. Like it's super good. We're also playing 2 games right now for Nostalgia Goggles, Centipede and Tactics Ogre, which could not be much more different from each other. So it's interesting to be playing those like at the same time. It's easy to not confuse them. But the one that I want to talk to you about, if we have time for it in topics, is Disney's Illusion Island, because it does some super interesting things. And more importantly, that game is the reason I have not yet played Oaken, because you, I think, want me to try Oaken because you think I would like it. And I actually think you and your family would like Illusion Island. So I want to kind of give you an idea of what it's about, and then you can judge the other players on your couch.
It looks like a platformer.
Well, we'll get there.
Okay. So yeah, no, interesting. And yes, I have been pushing for you to play Oaken because of what my topic is. So I am playing Moonlighter, because you recommended it to me, and so I played it. Interesting game. I think I might be done with it, but I did enjoy it, and it was free, so like I've maybe sunk about 10, 15 hours into it. Not nothing, right? About maybe 4 or 5 2-hour play sessions, something like that. But anyways, it was enjoyable. I think that my main takeaway from that is I really want to play Moonlighter 2 because it does a lot of really cool, interesting stuff, but it's just not quite honed, I think though that like, because you go through the dungeons and you hammer away at things, but for me, I very quickly found out that if you get the big sword, right, you can pretty much go toe to toe with almost anything and kill it before it kills you, and so that got a little bit repetitive. And one thing that I noticed that it did that to me, I was like, this, if they fixed this, I think it would completely change the dynamic of the game, which is your dodge roll does not interrupt your attack, and I think that it should.
I had that same thought because it makes you feel slow.
It does,
like
because the problem
you should be able to abandon, cancel out of your attack to avoid taking damage.
Yes, because then it would feel a lot faster paced, because then you go to swing on a thing and then it winds up to hit and you can be like, oh no, wait, and then dodge and then attack it from behind and you feel super light and happy and all this sort of stuff, but it doesn't let you do that. So because of that, once you commit to a swing and then it starts to swing too, you're like, well, I guess I'm just getting hit. So then the answer is to just get more hit points and do more damage, which the game lets you do. The one other funny thing that happened with Moonlighter that I got a kick out of was, I'm sitting there selling my wares and all this sort of stuff, people coming in and out, and one person comes in like a black trench coat with like that comes like up to his nose, right, and like a black hat, and he like starts walking to the back of the store. I'm like, that guy looks like he's about to steal something. So I got out from behind my counter, and sure enough, the guy swiped something and started to book it out of the store. And so you can press like R2 to scuffle with them and get the item back, and I did that and he ran away. I'm like, thank God for stereotyping, man, because I was like, Man, this guy looks pretty sneaky.
That's like your detective vision. Like he wasn't really dressed that way. That's just how he looked to you.
Yeah, but I was just kind of like, oh, that's kind of a fun, because otherwise just being in the shop is a little bit more mundane. But I'm like, oh, and then later somebody who did not look like a complete thief tried to steal something. So I was like, okay, so people stealing stuff is just like a thing that can happen. So, kind of cool. But yeah, I would recommend playing it. Again, the thing that to me is, it's free on the PlayStation Plus, whatever. So, if it costs you $0, it's definitely worth, a quick play.
And I think even full price, it's like $8. It's not.
Yeah.
Because it's an indie game that has been out for a while. So it's on sale often. It's free on certain storefronts. So like it is an interesting game and super accessible.
Yes. I also played some Final Fantasy 14.
This is what I want to hear about.
This isn't even my meaty thing that I want to talk about.
I know.
But I played Final Fantasy 14, and I haven't abandoned it. I stopped playing it because I've been playing just other stuff. But I got to level 20 in one class in like mage, one of the mage classes, and then I got to level 20 in like the fisticuff, the punchy
pugilist.
Yes, the
which
pugilist,
which eventually evolves into monk.
Yes. And here's the thing: is that as I was playing it, I'd play it, for an afternoon, right, for an evening, right, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and Megan be like, "So, what do you think?" I'm like, "I don't know if I like this. I'm gonna give it a little bit more time." And I play again, and Megan's like, "So, what do you think?" I'm like, "I don't know if I like this." And so I was constantly for like 20 hours of play, like on the fence of like, I'm not sure if I like this, I definitely was at no point like, I dislike this and I don't want to play it anymore. But at no point was I like, I am completely sold, I'm into it. And I have a couple of thoughts on that, but like, what is it that draws you to the game? Like, what are the 7 core aesthetics is it's itches it's scratching?
So for me, a lot of it is narrative. So the game,
that's what I thought.
So there's A Realm Reborn, right, which is where you are, and then there's the expansion. So Heavensward, Stormblood, Shadowbringers, and Endwalker. And Endwalker is the current expansion that I just finished recently. After
yes, because you are the Endwalker.
I am the Endwalker. You get titles that you can put on your name, and I have the Endwalker title because of course I do. I also have Barista at the End of the Universe. So
sounds very Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
That whole side quest where you get that is all super Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. They are not shy about like, this is the thing we're sort of riffing on.
Nice.
So I do enjoy the narrative. The narrative in A Realm Reborn is the most ham-fisted because they were trying to undo some of the narrative stuff and continue some of the narrative stuff. And so it's a little bit clunky in some parts, and the voice acting is not as good. So when there is voice acting, it's a lower quality and there's less of it in total, which may or may not be a good thing, depending on what you think of the quality of the voice acting. In the later expansions, the cutscenes are way tighter. There's way better voice acting. So the narrative is easier to get into because it's just higher polish. Like, it just feels more compelling. I grew up playing poorly translated SNES and Nintendo JRPGs, so like I can suspend my disbelief pretty easily. So I really enjoy the narrative, but there are certain mechanical things that I just find super soothing. So there's all the crafter and gatherer like jobs you can do. So like you can be a weaver or a fisher, and like it's super mechanically light. It's not really that hard, but it's the same reason I like games like Harvest Moon and Stardew Valley, right? It's just like, oh, my adventurer is also like a master armorer or blacksmith, right? Like the first one I picked up was Alchemist, and I was talking to one of our friends that plays, and they were like, oh, why do you want to do Alchemist? And I was like, I just think alchemists are cool. Like I have never crafted a high level potion and then sold it to make money. Like I just think it's cool that my character, just like in D&D, like I can say I am an alchemist, like I am a high level alchemist. And I just think that that's fun. And I find that kind of thing, engaging. One of the things that surprised me about it that I really enjoy is I love the fashion. I love playing Pretty Princess Sailor Moon dress up. Like I didn't expect that going into it, because a lot of games like Stardew Valley, like Animal Crossing, like a lot of those games, it's like, decorate your house and you can make it your own. And I've never engaged it. I've played hundreds of hours of Stardew Valley and hundreds of hours of Harvest Moon, and I put 0 seconds into like, oh, I want it to look exactly a certain way. But something about like, I want this shield and this armor and this like flaming sword, or even like the silly costumes that are like, oh, this cloak was given to you by this one character, so I'm going to wear it, even though it's not the best cloak. You can like glamour over better equipment so you can look a certain way, separate from your stats. I spent way too much time engaging with some of that because I just find it kind of fun and like therapeutic, and like there's no benefit at all if you're not a social player, and I'm not. Like a lot of people hang out in MMOs and like chat it up, right? And they're like, oh, look at this cool outfit I have. Oh, look at this. I have this title, which shows that I did this super hard side quest or beat this super crazy boss or whatever. I don't do any of that. So I'm literally just doing it for me, right? Like if no other character or no other like player in the universe ever sees me or says anything to me, like I don't care because that's not what I'm there for.
Well, you want to look good for you. You're not looking good for somebody else. You want to look good for you.
Yeah, super mature. And I actually feel really good about it. But like that one caught me by surprise. So like I knew going into it, I was probably going to like the narrative. I knew going into it, I was probably going to like some of the casual side stuff. The fashion thing, I was just like, oh, well. But when you put all those things together, plus like the little like pockets of, you know, like environmental world building that you can go and track down, which is kind of related to enjoying the narrative, is just easily put hundreds of hours into it, close to over 1,000 by this point, actually, easily. But I know that everything I just said, I'm pretty sure not things you seek out in video games.
Well, yeah, I mean, so if you look at it from a core aesthetic point, right? Narrative, right, is something that, you know, like I think, well, all 7 core aesthetics we seek out to, you know, to varying degrees, right? But yeah, like, so it sounds like your narrative and expression, right? You know, so like, hey, I want to like look cool. And to be fair, I get expression because I started playing as one character and then I abandoned it and made a new one that I named after Megan, and I like made it look like Megan, and I made it together to look like her. And so then I gave a crap about like the look because Megan wants to look good, right? So I'd say like, oh, look, I got you these cool little glasses, and Megan would be like, oh, neat, you know? So we had that kind of like dynamic. So I do get that. It sounds like those were the two. And I think that, so one, I do like narrative. I don't like Final Fantasy narratives, though. As a general rule, like the big, bombastic, like the multiverse is at stake, and, you know, like only you, the chosen one with your super magical energy, can save it with your other 4 stereotypes by your side, right? You know, like that. Tends to
the real magic was the stereotypes we made along the way.
Exactly. And I mean, and to be fair, you know, I did used to like it. I tend to drift more towards like kind of God of War, right? Where it's like, yes, the things that you're doing have great impacts, but you're doing it for a very small reason. Like as God of War, you're doing this because you want to protect your son from all of the bad stuff in your past. And by consequence, you're doing these like huge things. I'd say Herculean, but I'm pretty sure you killed him. So, you know. Anyways, so that's kind of more. So I don't think I'm going to get as much of the narrative. Interestingly, what I think I was getting out of it, which is why I think it'll probably stay like on my list of things to play up until I turn level 60 and then stop, is abnegation, you know, because it is really enjoyable for me to just go to the exclamation point, press X a whole bunch, go to the next exclamation point, press a few buttons, see the numbers go higher, go to the next exclamation point. Like, it's just, I can just zone out and do that. I can sit back and talk to Megan while I'm doing it. I can just, and it just puts my mind at ease to just do this kind of almost like grindy, monotonous task, you know, and then like once a session, go up to the thing that like almost killed me at the beginning of the session and just knock him across the map and be like, haha, see, you're awful and I'm great, and that was a good use of 2 hours. Okay, time for bed. So that's kind of where I ended up with it, which is why I kept saying like, I don't know if I like this, and it's just because I don't love it or hate it. But it is soothing, you know.
Yeah, and I wonder if I could. Especially because you're playing the free trial, which is just massive now, right? It's hundreds of hours of gameplay you could get into. I could imagine this becoming a thing you and Megan do to make Megan's character look the way Megan wants to look, right? So like I read a very funny article, I think in Polygon, that was the players who kill God in the name of fashion. And it's
Nice.
like, these are people who they just play the game for the fashion, but there's certain items that you have to kill end level boss or end game bosses to get those items, right? And if it's a hard boss and it only drops one and it only drops it randomly and there's 8 people in the party, you might have to do that dungeon a bunch of times, right? So like there's a lot of, for the super obsessives, like you may be an expert at the game for reasons that are totally different than other people who are experts at the game. But for you, because you have so much of the game that you can just play casually for free, there's all kinds of side jobs and other things you could do. So if Megan's like, oh, well, I want this kind of armor, or I want this kind of dress, or these boots, or this staff, or whatever, like you could just be level 20 in every job just so she can like have the weird combination of clothes she wants, right? And then it's like, oh, you become a culinarian because Megan, wants to have a character that cooks, or you become a fisher because you find like the fishing mechanic super soothing. Like that's then it becomes Animal Crossing, right? Where it's like the narrative, you don't even care. And you only progress the narrative because you're like, oh, I need to get my character to like level 40. So I need to get the narrative to this part so that I can get access to this equipment or whatever. And it's like not what I would have expected, but I could imagine that like, because then you like kind of like you were saying before, like you now are not assessing your time playing the game on the merits of the game. You're assessing it on the merits of the time you spend with Megan. So if you and Megan are having a fun time together and it means pushing buttons in front of this particular video game, like I can imagine that actually having some staying power.
Yeah, I think that this game may fall into like The Office, for me, where it's just like, I don't really know what to watch. I like The Office. I'll just watch a couple of episodes of The Office. Yeah, I'll just get a couple of levels in Final Fantasy XIV. Although, to be fair, the game that Megan and I are going to be playing soon is Baldur's Gate 3, because it's coming out on the PlayStation soon, and I pre-ordered it, not because digital pre-orders really have any value, or because I could play it 72 hours sooner, but because I said to a friend, I need to stop pretending that this money is in my bank account, because it is not. They already have it, So like, I need my bank account to be more reflective of my actual spending power, because this money's already spent. It just hasn't hit my account yet. So that will probably be our couch co-op game, because the fact that it has 2-player couch co-op, I'm very excited about.
Is it?
So yeah, so it plays.
Does it have like difficulty settings?
No idea.
Okay, because my experience with Megan as a gamer is she's not in it for super high challenge.
No, but my understanding is it's just like D&D, so it is turn-based. So
oh, that's right. Yeah, it is honest to God turn-based. Yeah. Okay, so she doesn't have to make snap decisions.
Right. So and there may be some like, oh, do I want to use this spell or this spell? But I mean, that type of challenge Megan would get into. If it was like a Twitch reflexes, I don't think that would be as much her bag. So then I've also been playing the game Oaken, which is very much so like when Teddy asked me about it, he says, what is this? I'm like, it's kind of like chess, but it's a tactics based game, really, really beautiful music. And as the teaser, it is, because we'll circle back to it, right? It is to difficulty as Celeste is to cycle time, in my opinion. This is now the gold standard that I think people should do for how to approach difficulty in games. And I was very surprised by like how awesome it was, the way that I feel that they approached it, and like how it was like, oh, this is what I've been trying to articulate that I want, and they gave it to me, and I'm very excited about it. And that's why I was like, you need to check this out.
Yeah, I mean, I was planning to do it anyway, but that like, if you had led with that, I might have picked it up a week ago, because it's like, oh, I'm trying to imagine like how is that manifesting? Like, I want to see it.
Right? No, it's really clever. They do a number of really clever things where I was just kind of like, by the time because I beat it and I went back and continued to play it, I was just kind of like, oh, okay. So, like it just kind of hit me in a wave, where I was like, this managed to create the exact difficulty and the exact experience I wanted without allowing me to get in my way, which is pretty good, especially for like a strategy based game like this, because I absolutely would have let my pride get in the way if they had let me, because I think I'm good at this stuff, and that's a problem, right? When you're trying to assess best difficulty experience, pride does not help you. No, Zuko, pride is not the absence of shame. It is instead its source.
We're rewatching that right now, and I came across an article about a new game for the Avatar universe.
Oh, yeah. I heard that.
And they were like, oh, blah, 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 14 years ago. And I just went, and then last night we watched an episode, and I looked up because I was like, I had my laptop in my lap and I was doing something. I looked up and I went, it's 4:3 even. Like I'm old. Like I didn't even think about it until I was like focused on how old it was. I was like, oh God, it's not even widescreen.
Oh no. And the last game I've been playing, which I just started, and so I'm going to set the scene for you because I was so excited about this game. And now that I'm playing it, I'm worried that it's not going to live up to the hype, but I want the game that it thinks it is,
Yikes.
Well, because I think that honestly, if you took the engine behind the first part and then applied it to a different type of game, I think that it would work really well. But basically is that it's a kind of like it's called RimWorld, right? And so it's a kind of a 4X survival strategy. It's almost like what is it, Alone in the Dark? Or am I saying that right?
Oh, are you thinking of...
All Alone.
No, are you thinking of Don't Starve?
Don't Starve, yes.
Yeah.
Yep, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. But basically, like, so I open up the game, right? And it starts off with like, okay, first off, pick your scenario. Like, because it says like, this is a storytelling game. And so it's like, go on. It said, all right, man, pick your scenario. You have just, you awake from your cryo sleep compartment to find that the ship's sirens are blaring and you just barely make it to your escape pod. You are now marooned on this world with you and the three companions, right? You have to figure out how to get off the world, right? And so then you pick your companions, and then it says like, or you can pick this next scenario, which is that, the machine god, the machine gods of old have destroyed your tribal village. You and your other tribes members must survive, right? Or it could be like, everyone called you. And so with that one, you start off as 5 people, but you start less technologically advanced, right? Or it's like, or you start off with one person. It's like, people called you mad for being, and basically you're just a rich jerk who decided to go colonize a planet, right? Or there was like another one, and then, or it's like custom, man. Make whatever scenario you want. But with each one that you picked, it said it scaled up and down the difficulty marker based off of like how difficult the scenario is. And I was like, that's pretty cool. And so then it says like, cool, now pick your people, man. They've got names, they've got histories and their backgrounds, and all of that determines like their skill sets. And so you can kind of like pick your crew members. Then it says, all right, man, now pick your storyteller. And so it gives you like 3 options of like AIs that generate how the difficulty is set, right? So it says like, hey, you can do this person, and they love classic storytelling where like there's some strife but then some pullback and like normal dips and valleys. You can play with this other person who, like they normally start the story off pretty easy, but then they ramp it up in difficulty towards the end. Or you can play with this person who thinks like, all strife, it makes for good storytelling. So they're all over the place with the way they tell their story. Which storyteller do you want? So I was like, I want this storyteller. They're like, cool, man. Now, what kind of experience do you want? Do you want it to be peaceful? Do you want it to be this? And again, like each choice that you make moves the difficulty bar, so you can determine like how difficult do you want this? And the whole time they're just like upfront with you because they do it under the guise of, we're going to work with you to tell a story, and what kind of story do you want to tell, as opposed to how difficult do you want the game? It's like, no, man, what story do you want to tell? And then one of the things, so it says, the last thing is, how do you want to set up the save settings? Which is, one, you can only save and quit, right? Or you can save whenever you want. And they said, basically, as they say, we recommend the one where you can only save and quit, because they literally said, there's a reason why Luke Skywalker didn't reload his save when his family died on Tatooine, because like strife makes for a good story, And I was like, well, yeah, so
yeah.
So I picked all of
Screw Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru.
Yeah. So I picked all of these choices, and then I got sent down to the planet, and then the UI was so complicated and like, and so I went back and I did the tutorial and I was like, oh my God, like the way that you're forcing me to interact with these people seems like clunky and stunted. And like, you literally have to tell the people like, you are allowed to pick up wood. You know, there's wood everywhere and they need to use it to build stuff, but you need to tell them that they're allowed to pick up wood. Like, you need to tell them to like cook meals. You need to tell them like, you need to micromanage every little bit of this thing. And I'm like, no, I was in this not for a micromanaging thing. You sold me on telling a story. Like, let me tell you the 4 things that I think are important. You go do that, and then you throw obstacles in my path. Like, you know, hey, I need you to go. Kimmy, I need you to do research. John, I need you to go mining, and Steve, I need you to go hunting. And then all of a sudden, Steve comes back to me. He's like, hey, I got hurt while hunting, and I need some antibiotics. I was like, oh, well, we only have 3 grams of antibiotics, so yeah, you can use some. But then, but I'm like, okay, Kimmy, you've got medical, so you help John. It's like, but you know, or Steve, like, but you know, Kimmy and Steve used to have a thing together, so they don't get along very well. So like, both of their happiness is going to drop a little bit, which is, you know, like, that's what I was kind of looking for, and it's not that. So I've only got about like 3 hours into it, so I'm going to give it some more time, but I was really excited about the beginning bit. Like, I want that game, you know? So anyways.
Yeah, that's interesting because I when I was just looking at screenshots of RimWorld, I was like, oh, I think I actually have heard of this game before, or heard of this universe. But what your description is making me think a lot about is another game I haven't played called Dwarf Fortress, which is...
Yes.
My understanding, and if we have any hardcore fans of Dwarf Fortress in the audience, I may be about to infuriate them, but my understanding is you don't direct individual dwarves at all. It's that they do things and you can see what they care about so that you can try to make them behave in a certain way, right? So like, this dwarf really likes to build things, so if you put him near like mining equipment and crafting equipment, like he will just happily build and he'll build stuff, right? But there's like roving monster attacks and like people remember the things that happened to them. So like this dwarf was attacked by a lizard hundreds of turns ago, and then later he got hurt and he became an alcoholic because he couldn't do his job anymore because of his injury. And so one day he gets like really drunk and goes and just starts murdering lizards, like at great risk to his life. And there's nothing you can do about that. Like that is just how that dwarf's life unfolded. And so my understanding is that part of what people like about it is you're like a non-omnipotent god, right? Like you are turning some knobs and pulling some levers, but you can't snap your fingers and make the world the way you want. You can't snap your fingers and make people behave the way you want. And so you don't have perfect knowledge over my actions will have this exact result. And as things get more complicated, the systems become way too complex for you to keep in your head. And so then you might do something and you get the immediate result you wanted, but it has like these insane knock-on effects you might never have imagined. And my impression from seeing people rave about the game is that the thing they like about that is the like post justification narrative, right? Is something insane that they did not expect happens in the universe, and then they kind of rewind the tape and they're like, oh, this guy developed a blood feud with that guy because that guy slept with the first guy's wife and he never forgave him. And so he was over here crafting weapons, and I thought it was because he wanted the fortress to be safe, but actually it's because he needed to make the perfect axe to cut this guy's head off with so that his revenge would be complete, right? And like some of that is facts, like there are observable facts in the universe, but a lot of it is like you projecting onto it.
Sure.
And if that is at all what playing that game is actually like, it kind of sounds amazing. And I think at some point I would like to give it a try, but I think based on what little I know of RimWorld, I think you might check out Dwarf Fortress and a game called Prison Architect.
Yeah, I'll give RimWorld a little bit more time, because the what I was hoping for is one of the things I loved the most about Darkest Dungeon was making the narrative, right? Which the game kind of creates the space for, but if you want to like remember it, you've got to like write it all down, you know? But I love that because I'd say like, oh, these 4 people went into the dungeon, but this person like became, you know, fearful. And then I would add my own restrictions. Like, I'm not going to let these people party together anymore because the last time, you know, he got really mad and like beat her to near death. So like they're afraid of each other. And I wanted like a game that like enforced that. And what I really wanted, that I don't think that I can see it doing so far, is I wanted to like bring up it generating the actual narrative, like writing it down. It's like, this person got hurt, this person did this. But so far, like, I'm 3 days into it, and like it's just like, oh yeah, this person collected wood, then they built this thing, then they did this. I'm like, yeah, but that's not the way I would describe my day. I wouldn't say like, what did you do today? Oh, I went and got wood and you know, built a part of the house. It's like, all right, well, what else did you do? It's like, well, I'll tell you what I did was I admired my love interest from afar. And, you know, like that would be the thing that I would remember, is, you know, like the human parts of it. So we'll see how it goes. But
I think that's where something like Dwarf Fortress, again, by the fabrication I've invented, that may not be real, but the fabrication that I invented, the reason that I could see that being more successful for the kind of thing you're describing is the game is giving you so little that you have to project onto it, right? Mm-hmm. Or you want the game to tell you what happened and how the characters think and feel, right? Like I don't project onto Kratos. Kratos just straight up tells me through his words and actions how he thinks and feels, right? So like I'm empathizing with the character, but I'm not deciding for the character. In my imaginary version of Dwarf Fortress, it's almost a blank page, right? It's like an uncolored, like coloring book page. So you have to imagine the colors because there aren't any, right? Whereas what you're describing sounds almost like it seems like they're going to do the heavy lifting for you. So you sort of like relax your joints and you get ready to sit down. And then they're like, well, are you going to help me carry this? And then you're like, oh, well, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to, okay, hang on. Let me just like stretch out my knees. And right. And so like your expectation and the reality aren't quite aligning. It's not that its level is necessarily right or wrong, but it's like, it's sort of promising one thing and then it's sort of delivering another.
Yeah. Cause I think that's just, to me so far is they allow, to your point, right? It's like, I want it to be closer to Dwarf Fortress, your imaginary version of Dwarf Fortress, because I don't want to have this nuanced control that they give you over these people, right? Because the analogy that I used is it would be like if in Darkest Dungeon, I said like, okay, we're going into the dungeon, attack that bad guy, use your, you know, vine whip. And the person's just kind of like, oh, I didn't bring my vine whip. Why? Oh, because you didn't tell me to. It's like, well, you're a warrior, right? Like, why in the world did you not? It's like, well, you didn't tell me to. Oh, well, okay, then defend. It's like, oh, I don't have my armor on. I'm actually naked. It's like, what? Why would you go into the dungeon naked? Well, you didn't tell me to get dressed. It's like, oh my God, you know. So like that, I want to kind of direct the broad strokes and have a lot of it work out, and then I want drama to ensue because of effectively my poor management, you know, because to your point, like I forgot that these two people don't like each other, or I know that they don't like each other, but I don't care because this task has to get done. Like those are the types of collisions that I want, not, hey, you can't finish building your house because you forgot to tell people to go grab the wood that is right next to the house. It's like, well, okay.
Yeah.
So
if you're gonna make me enter commands, don't make one of those commands be wipe your ass. I assume that is a thing you are doing off camera.
Right, like you've got that. So do you want to do Illusion Island or Difficulty in Vision Games Oaken Edition?
Let's start with Illusion Island because I've been chewing on this and I specifically put off Oaken to bring this recommendation to you.
Fair enough.
So Disney Illusion Island is no question a Metroidvania. That's just what it is, right? It is up to 4-player couch co-op, and it seems to work on the like side character in a bubble, like new Super Mario Brothers style, right? So like if player 2 or 3 or 4 dies, when you get to a checkpoint and they are everywhere, they just come right back, right? So there's like virtually no penalty. And when you are starting the game, and I think you can literally do this every time you turn the game on. I've just been putting my Switch into suspend, so I haven't gone through the title screen again. But you choose how much health you want: 1 heart, 2 heart, 3 heart, or steel heart. And then you just don't take damage, right? And it's just built right in. So like, you know, you have 2 younger kids. One of them is much younger. So like she can play with the steel heart where it's impossible for her to die. So then she can just have fun and essentially cannot disrupt what the more games literate players are trying to do. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So right before you even get into the game, when I saw that on the like create a new save file screen, I was like, okay. I see what they're doing here. And then, and those can be mix and match, right? So then once you get into the game, it's very, you know, it's Disney cartoon. It's the new style of like Mickey Mouse shorts. I like that art style, but there's a lot of that. So, you know, be prepared, I guess. They're all the cutscenes are voiced. So it's very engrossing in the little cutscenes because they're basically little cartoons. But the gameplay is 100% a Metroidvania, but it's not just baby's first Metroidvania. It's casually teaching someone these are the kinds of things you need to care about in a Metroidvania. So like the map is very richly detailed, right? There's all these little question marks. And it's like, oh, you don't have the power you need to break through the floor or to jump over here or whatever. And so on the map, there's like a little warning sign. It's like a little blue sign with a little white question mark in it. And then when you get that power, that sign changes into the sign that shows the power. So you are being spoon-fed the information, and for someone with a more sophisticated games literacy, that is incredibly like insulting. But for a young kid or someone who doesn't have a good games literacy, you are learning like, oh, this gap is big, and so I can expect to find some way to traverse that gap, right? And so there's lots of little stuff like that throughout. The thing that really shoved in my face, like this is a game for either children or people with low games literacy, there's zero combat. Zero. So there are enemies. There are environmental hazards like spikes and stuff. There's no pits, so no instant death nonsense, right? Unless you only have one hit point. But all of the enemies are, the challenge is avoiding them. And because it's a Metroidvania, platforming is how you interact with the whole world. So that's also how you interact with the enemies, is by not interacting with them, right? You want to jump onto this platform, but over this enemy. And some enemies only attack when you get close to them. So you have to like keep your eyes open. And some enemies move fast, but only when they see you. So if you go like up and around them, they'll just completely ignore you. So it's all of these little things that basically, if you were trying to explain to someone, how do you make a Metroidvania, and then you just took everything they said at face value and put it into a game, that is what this game is. There's no obfuscation. Everything is very, very clear. Everything is very, very transparent, sometimes to the point of being frustrating if you have a high games literacy, but it's fast, right? So it's everything is clear, but they never like drag it out for a million years. So if you do get it, you just go, oh, okay, you press X to go past the text and you go on with your life. It's 4-player couch co-op, which you have a family of 4, right? So like you could easily play this together and have everybody's health be kind of dialed into the experience that they want to have. Because there's 4 characters, you also get to like pick the character you want to play as. You don't have to be Mickey if you're player 1, for example. It's just
nice. Yep.
It's just really interesting. And because I'm also playing it couch co-op, I'm like, oh, I don't mind that this is completely non-difficult. Like there's zero, I could practically do this with my eyes shut, right? Because the game world is just fun to move through. You get all the stereotypical Metroidvania abilities. You could swing from stuff and double jump and ground pound, right? You get all the Dead Cells abilities, but it's just like the risk is super low and the threat is super low and the characters are fun and the story is fun. And it's just like a little snackable thing. How Long to Beat sets it at only like 6 hours. So you could, if you played it in little chunks with small kids, like you could get through it in a reasonable amount of time without them completely forgetting the controls. Even the controls, basically every power is mapped to one button, but they're contextual, right? So if you press down and the use your power button, you do the ground pound. But if you press the use your power button when you're near something you can swing on, then you swing on it because that's a higher priority because that keeps you up instead of sending you down. So like everything is just so like Metroidvanias for dummies, basically. It's really, really well crafted. And I could imagine someone with like a more sophisticated games literacy saying like, this is childish, this is insulting, I'm not an idiot. And it's like, but it's not for you.
Right.
You don't have training wheels on your bike because you know how to ride a bike. But for someone who doesn't know how to ride a bike, training wheels are a way for them to learn, right? Strider bikes are a way for them to learn because their feet are still on the ground. Like, and then they'll learn how to ride a bike and they can do sick 360s off of the half pipe. But like, they got to start with the learning thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it definitely seems really interesting. I think right now, the main video game that Teddy is working through is Kingdom Hearts. So,
Disney.
Yeah, so Disney. So I think that he would be interested to play this after that. Just because, he doesn't get a tremendous amount of time to play video games, but and he'd get more if he'd use his time better. But that's
this is brand new, so. And it's a Nintendo game, which means it's never going to go on sale. There's never going to be a discount. Right. So you buy it today or you buy it 2 years from now, it's $30.
Yep. So that's cool. I like it. Good recommendation.
All right. Tell me about why Oaken is hard and how they do being hard right. Oh God, that sentence is awful.
Yeah. That don't just bleep that whole thing. So basically I was playing Oaken, right? And so this is it's a tactical strategy game, right? And there's a lot to this game. There's a whole bunch of different like statuses and abilities and all sorts of stuff. But the nice thing is that so right when you start off, right, it's like, hey, this is your main character. It runs you through a kind of a quick tutorial where it kind of points some stuff out, right? It says, all right, and so the first thing it does is it says, you can pick, because it's also a roguelike, right? So the idea is that you're going to play it many, many times, and each time you get a couple of extra abilities and stuff like that. So it's meant to be played many times. So the first thing it says is like, hey, who do you want your hero to be? Who do you want your guide to be? You only have a choice of one. But it says, so do you want to play in journey mode or relaxed mode, right? And so it's a journey mode is for, people who like want to go on like a more intense journey. Relaxed mode is for people who want to relax and kick it. And I said, well, I want to do journey mode. Let's do journey. And it wasn't until I was playing it, I was like, that was the difficulty setting, right? Is they were, what they were doing was they were saying, do you want to play on hard or easy? Right. And I picked hard, right? But the thing is that like, because they, and a lot of games do this, but I feel like some of them flub it a little bit where they'll be like, do you want to play on story mode or advanced mode or super advanced mode? Or like they'll pick some word that has a connotation that directly relates to difficulty, right?
Right. And it's which also relates to pride, right? Well, I want the real big boy pants experience.
Right. And they'll say like, well, this is the way that the game was meant to be experienced. And you're like, well, I mean, I'm a big boy. I don't need the little, pee in my pants kiddie pool. Like I can do it. Right. Whereas what I might have more fun with is just the story. Right. Because maybe that's what I'm into. But when it's like, oh, if you just want the story, you can do that. It's like, I want the story or read the book or watch a movie. I want to play a game. Right. So they didn't do that. They said journey or relaxed, right? Relaxed is a more, and again, like it wasn't an easier experience. It is a more relaxed experience, So I liked all of that. But then, and so as I'm playing through the game, I played through it once. I got through out of 4 stages where the 4th one is like the boss, the big boss, right? I got to the boss of stage 3 on like the first playthrough, and then I beat the game on the second playthrough, right? And this is a roguelite, which is supposed to be played many, many, many times, right? And so I was just like, oh, okay. And I found the game very nice, very enjoyable, very relaxing. I was like, okay, that was pretty cool. And then they did the thing where I was like, this is how difficulty should be done. So I'm going to put a pin in that to build the suspense. Gonna
go back cut to 2 weeks later.
Yeah, 2 weeks earlier. Remember when I was playing what was it? It was Rogue Legacy 2?
Yeah.
And I said like I hard burned out on it, right? Because it was too hard.
Yeah, and I think you said it wasn't just too hard, it was like hard in ways they got right in the first game.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. All that. And also too though is that they said like, hey man, you could use house rules. You want enemies to have like 50% health? Huh? Champ, you want to deal 200% damage? You can do it all, man. You want to triple jump? You want to be invincible? Huh? You little baby? Yeah. And again, like that's not what they were doing. They were trying to make like basically an accessibility mode like in Celeste. And that's great, right? But like it wasn't framed as accessibility options. It was framed as and they were trying to frame it as house rules. But I'm like, no, I don't want the enemies to have half health because I'm a little baby pee pants. I want to beat them. Let me do more damage, right? So what this does is, and I was so surprised I didn't think about it before now, it used the World of Warcraft approach, because I beat the game, and once I beat the game, you know what it said? Hey, how would you like to make it harder? And so it gave me all of those same options, but it was upping the difficulty, not dropping it, right? And so I was like, oh, well, you know what? Let me try this, or maybe I'll do this difficulty. And actually, I played through a few more times being like, I don't want any changes in difficulty. I'm finding this enjoyable because I can just kick my mind back and relax. But I think that's what difficulty settings should do. And especially like there's a million different ways to approach this, right? But make it so that way when you're so often, like they'll say like, oh, for example, I think it was Dragon Age Origins, where like it will automatically drop the difficulty if you're struggling, you know? And the thing is, that feels great until you notice that it happened, and then you are furious.
Yes.
Right?
Adjustable or auto adjusting difficulty it's a magic trick, right? The second you know you've been played as a chump, you're like, wait a minute, this is all a TV show where the whole point is that the audience is laughing at me? Well, now it's not fun anymore, right?
Right. But I think, though, that if you say, like, hey, I want to play, you know, like, we're basically, they say, hey, man, everybody, you know, you start off on, like, let's just say journey or relax mode. Which one do you want? You're like, I want journey mode. It'll never go below a certain difficulty, right? But make that difficulty very easy and then allow it to be ramped up. Even if you do it dynamically in the background to where you're like, man, they just one-shotted, like, no, they have taken 0 hit points of damage in, like, you know, 2 battles, like, because they're so quick on the controls. It's like, all right, so we're going to up the difficulty for you and up the difficulty for you. And now maybe drop it back down, right? But because we never went below your selected difficulty, then you'd be like, man, that last battle seemed a little bit hard. And it's like, yeah, it was, but we kind of nerfed it towards the end there because we were bringing you back down to the difficulty you always suggested. So again, like this one it had like, you know, hey, you can't continue after this certain point, or you get less of this type of resource, or, you know, all of these different things. Now, to make the game easier and get more of stuff, right? Well, you play the game and you get the points, and it's a roguelite. So, you know, like, you can get some additional abilities that like make the game play a little bit different and more in interesting and fun ways. But the fact that basically is, when I played it through, I was like, this game was pretty easy and I enjoyed it being easy, but I could see people being like, this game is for little babies. Like, I'm a super genius. And then it's like, man, if you're a super genius, and they broke the difficulties out into tiers of difficulty. So it's like, do you want to add 3 instances of tier 1 difficulty, 1 instance of tier 3, 5 instances of tier 3, all of them? Up to you, man. So I just had an immediate flashback to that Rogue Legacy 2. But I was like, but this feels good because it's saying, hey, man, and the other analogy that I thought of that I was just like, this is, and of course this is the way to do it. Why wouldn't you do it this way, right? Is if you're trying to get somebody really involved and excited to go to the gym and work out, right? What you don't do is like have them sit down on the bench press, throw 35 big boy or 3 big boy plates on each side and say, if you can't do this, then you're a little baby and you should get the hell out of here. Or if you want, I could take all of this weight off, nerd, right? Like, what you would probably do is you'd say, like, I think that they can probably bench press 95 pounds. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw on 75. And then they bust that stuff out like no sweat. And you're like, oh, would you like me to up the weight for you? You know? And it's like, yeah, man, throw some more weight on there. It doesn't matter that like that's less or more or whatever. It's just like, hey, I'm going to up the weight. And you're like, yeah, I'm doing more weight than when I started. And that feels great, as opposed to, oh, you couldn't even do the beginner weight? Oh my goodness. Are you going to be okay? So yeah, always make it so that way you thread it on the easy side and then say like, hey, you're such a rock star, I think that we need to up the difficulty. Are you cool with that? Which I think is even the better way to go than dynamically adjusting it on the back end, is just say like, hey, you know, just a little pop-up that says like, hey man, you just got through the last 3 battles taking 0 damage. I think you can handle a higher difficulty. You want that? And you can say like, no, I'm okay with being a golden god. Or yeah, man, you know what? You're right, game. You need to try harder to beat me. You know? That feels awesome. And it's way more likely to result in a good player experience.
So I agree 100%. And 2 games you made me think of, because I'm usually pretty okay with, I'm playing this on story mode or I'm playing this on easy. I don't tend to use accessibility settings that are specifically like, I can't push the buttons fast enough because my hands are healthy. I'm lucky enough to be able-bodied. So like, I don't usually, even if I'm struggling, I'll usually try and like learn that skill and get over that. But if it's like, oh, this enemy has this tell that I'm having a hard time learning this tell, and if they hit me, it's going to do like 95% of my health. I'm just like, yeah, let's just kick that down to story mode, beat this boss, and then bump it back up, right? Like I'm too old for caring about that. But I do prefer a more stable curve where it feels like I am learning and I am getting better and the game is getting harder, but I'm getting better faster than the game can get harder, right? Because it just feels good to get good at things. This is why people have hobbies, because even though
That's why things.
Yeah, it doesn't feed you, it doesn't put a roof over your head, it doesn't let you, pay for things like health care in this country, but it does let you like have that sense of achievement, and people generally like that. Hades does exactly what you're describing, right? Once you go through the game and you've earned all the power-ups and you're a super badass and you defeat Hades, then you can use the curses, and the curses make the game harder instead of easier. So not only can you undo the things that made the game easier for you, but now you can start to dial up things that will make the game harder, more enemies, faster enemies, more damage, right? So like, but if you've gotten to the place where that menu becomes unlocked, you know what you're in for, and you're like, right, okay, this is fine. We're on the same page. Like, I'm here for this challenge. Show me the real difficulty settings that are under the hood, right? With, like the other extreme, I think, is what is way, way, way harder to do as a creative person is to say, this is what I want to make, and you're going to love it, even if you want something to be super hard or if you want it to be super easy. And the best example I can think of for that is the Mario series, right? People who are ultra elite professional video game players play Super Mario 64, and children in 1995 who barely knew how to hold that stupid controller because of its dumb shape play Mario 64, right? Like, that game, it has no difficulty settings. It has zero accessibility settings. You can't even control the goddamn camera. Like, there's so little control you have other than make Mario jump now. And yet, because of the way the world is designed, and because moving him is so much fun, you can have someone who just walks from point A to point B and gets the star, and they're like, yahoo! And they feel really good about it. And then you have somebody who's like going out of bounds and jumping off the wall and doing all kinds of crazy flips and things that the game was never expecting you to even attempt, let alone master and be able to do blindfolded and upside down like some crazy speedrunners do. And that is like the holy grail to me. Like, this game has a single difficulty, and yet it is so well realized that novices and hyper experts somehow find this game attractive.
Yes, no, I agree. Like, the true holy grail is like saying, hey, you can walk from point A to point B or parkour from point A to point B, and both are fun, and both and both are legitimate, and so making a difficulty that is self-imposed and fun to self-impose is really enjoyable. I mean, even Darkest Dungeon, to a degree, in my opinion, had that, because I played the humanitarian, right? And that's a self-imposed difficulty where I'm like, I'm not losing anybody, so like that, I think absolutely that is the dream, what everyone should strive for, but not everyone is going to get there or even try. But I think that basically what my new like, this is the way I think this thing should be done kind of thing, is it's like, instead of, because to your point, right, is that by the time the extra difficulties open up in Hades, or in this case, Oaken, or whatever, right, you've played enough of the game to know what you're getting into. When I'm booting up the game for the first time, it says, how hard do you want this to be? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I have no idea. I don't even know how to play this game. Yeah. So what I think that the option shouldn't be is like, do you want to play on very easy, normal, medium, hard, or very hard? Because a lot of them have like the at least 5, right? Like story, easy, medium, hard, and then like extreme, right? Instead of doing that, don't give me that option. Don't call it this, but give me the option between very easy and easy. And those are the only 2 options you give me. And then as I play it, if I am wrecking face, then say, hey, looks like you're kicking ass. You want me to dial up the difficulty a bit? And I'll be like, yeah, do it. Because then, as far as a pride thing, if now all of a sudden I start getting my lunch ate, I'm like, oh, And then it should never ask me if I want to drop the difficulty. It should never do that. It should say, do you want to up the difficulty? Like, yeah, man. And then if I'm getting my lunch ate, I'm like, actually, let's pull the difficulty back down a little bit. And then once I do that, don't ask me again, right? But then like if I, I then now qualified for normal, right? And he goes like, man, you're still rocking out. You want even more? You want some more weight on that? Yeah, man. You want some more weight on that until you can get all the way up to very hard, because worst case scenario, right? Like, some people don't know that very hard mode exists until they talk to somebody. They're like, there's a super hard mode, right? It's like, oh, well, I guess I never got there, right? But yeah, I mean, like that's the way it should be, as opposed to like, I should try to guess what I think, with no experience, what I think the game devs think I will have the best experience with. It's like, no. Let me just, the difficulty should ask me, do you want to go a little bit harder, up until the point where the game stops asking me, and the game stops asking me because I am now having what the game devs want me to have as an experience. If they say, and that's the awesome thing, is that like from game to game, that can be scaled, right? Because if they say, we want you to feel like a golden god 90% of the time, except 1% of the time where you get your balls rocked, right? It's like, all they do is just put in the math that says like, hey man, if you're dropping to less than 90% health in any of these points, that's where you need to be, Or if they say, we want you to be getting rocked out like 80% of the time, then if after any encounter you're at more than 50% health, that's the trigger to say, maybe you want to up the difficulty because you're not having the fight for your life, holy, oh my God, frightening experience that I want. You're not being challenged, So then they could take like whatever the aesthetics they think are in the game, right? And then they can use that to define when they ask you if you want to make it more difficult, So yeah. That. And Oaken does that. And that's why Oaken is the Celeste of difficulty.
The curtain falls. The music plays. The credits roll. Then it all fades to black. And you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creeping with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less on how you saved the day than on all the experience